But the first one is called Blue Boy. And before the poem, there's a quote, and it's from Moonlight, the movie that came out in 2016. And it is running around, catching up all the light. In moonlight, black boys look blue. You blue. A slim boy runs through the woods, howling at the moon, the petrichor nipping at his toes, grass full of waking cicadas, and ground thumping with the laughter of his dead mother. In the moonlight, he is lit like a cool blue spoon, and his brother behind him, arrow blue and Cordovan brown, is running after his shadow, trying to catch fireflies in its wake. He is running through a pudding green morning, the backsplash of night a distant howl into the trees. Feet full of feathers and toenails tucked to the brim with earth. He feels so full on freedom he is foaming at the mouth with it. And he does not care how feral he looks to the eye. Rushed in his scattered joy and frenzy, the slim boy dances under the moonlight and around his brother, who behind him is a shadow full of grass, gone and never there, unmanifest from his sight, swept up into the wind like his mother's laughter, the buzzing of it, an echo through astroturf, the chime of a memory aired back to life under the pull of the moon, right in front of the slim boy's brown eyes, as he cocks his head back to look at the wonderful orb and think it. Okay, the next poem I'm gonna read, it's kind of a longer poem, and I wrote it when I was actually taking poetry classes at UK during my like junior year. So it's been a while, and I don't think I've actually read this one like outside of that class. It's called I Think I'm Your Mother Reincarnated. Is this why you do not love me? And the epigraph before it is to take part in you is to die, and it's from Alice Notley. To take part in you is to die standing above the moon glare of your severed soul, which rises in honor to the reflective mirror shining back your tiny consciousness. Whittling storylines into the delusional mess of your splintered, smoked out hands, which cradle your inner child, tucked and curled around a blackened heart nestling away at your spine. I jumped last night. You were just a boy running through a field under cold night, chasing the shadow of your dead mother and outrunning the outstretched hands, outstretched fingers of your brother trying to snatch the dreamscape away from you. I didn't recognize the scent of your tears until it was too late and I was drowning in the musk of them, and your unfettered face staring back at me, begging me to save you from the onslaught of gagged memories creeping into your browned out irises. Upturned earth reeling from the aftershocks of oppressed memories, dream walking in cyclical frenzy around your nape. The softened skin sinking into a blubbering child, yearning to be held by his mother's ghost. I see your howling and the claws cutting into your tender epidermis, Dad. It hurts, doesn't it? To not be seen in your illusioned reality by the child you helped create. You're just a temple rattling around a gun waiting to soak in silver. To love you is to die standing over my own heartbeat. I'm stomping on it. I'm stomping on it, swirling in circles around your mother's gravestone. Her face is my face beating into your forehead. It's so hard to look at us, isn't it? To see the woman who birthed you in your child's mouth. I'm holding her scream between my molars, Dad. Can't you hear her trying to claw out of me? Can't you see I'm holding her in for your own for your own good? I used to kill myself for you to love me. Now I'm full of dead screams and heavy air. No wonder when you look at me, you don't see daughter. I'm just a girl you're forever tied to, trying to run from your outstretched hands into my own body. I can't pretend to love her even though we share the same face. I can't tear her phantom from me. You spoke her into a haunting, and now she won't leave this familiar body. How could you leave me with the corpse of an unfamiliar woman telling me to love her? Okay. And then the next poem I'm gonna read is called Oh My Love, and it's based off an FKA Twig song called Oh My Love. And if you haven't listened to it, I recommend it. It's a great dance song. She's a great artist. Okay. Oh my love, call me your altar. It's been a long road to nowhere. The least you could do is worship me. 365 days around the sun with you and making all the big decisions for you. The way you looked at me to lead, I might as well have been your deity. Oh my love, I know our love, quicksand and cannibalism, gnawing on the hand that feeds you. Oh, my love, gods are hard to stomach. You can't stomach me. Me, all knowing, knew how to stomach you, how to hold you inside me like your mother. Oh, my love, how you must miss her womb, her damp, suffocating walls, the stench of her repressive warmth. Oh, my love, I know how to handle you like a dog. Oh, my love, I know our love, bones. Oh, my love, you're a dog, go bury them. Oh, my love, hide our love, howl at me. You're a whelp of a thing, so let me hear you. I'm a moon god now, so you have no choice but to bow to me. Oh, my love, you're not my love, yet I know how silently your thoughts worship me. Okay. And then the last poem that I'm gonna read, I actually just titled it today. And it's called Dead Fairy, I Can't Love You. The dead fairy rotting and quick-stepping on my brainstem wants me to love her, full-bellied and unconditional. But unconditional love isn't real love or real, so I'll let her rot heartless and barren in me, hold her hostage to my unbridled thoughts and the wave of slow frenzied panic the thought of love brings. Her fluttering wings, physical manifestation of my heartbeat, battling inside my ribcage for stillness. But still, she goes on, pacing and howling about love and about how possession roots itself in all of us in love, and how the bats echolocating inside her ear want to know about it too as they wither inside the hot labyrinth of them. They want to hear how the feeling bubbles in me, hot boil over of hot boil of overindulgent emotions. Love is a door knock away from obsession for me. It's a buildup of slow rage hiding inside my trachea, never ready to strike, but baking in me. The fairy hearing these thoughts cuts back at me about soulmates, about hope and afterbirth, about the romance of sunsets and the lack of sex. She wants me to love her, whole, and I cannot do so even as the bats are screeching on in her inner ear about how I got here, asking me how I got here, like I plotted out the journey clear in front of me, winding road to nowhere, desolate and loveless. I'm a human void with no answers. And that was my last poem. Thank you guys.
Carrington, you have a way of saying things in a way that makes everyone around you um also feel that type of slow rage. You just said slow rage, and I was like, that is exactly what I think about. It's like you're the kindest person I know, but you also have this ability to be so big with your emotions, and I love everything about your poetry. So I just wanted to like get into the conversation with you. We recently had a conversation about nature and how our environment shapes our poetry. But I guess my question, especially with that last poem, what influences your writing? What do you find that you go back to over and over? Is it music, art, nature, or does it all come from personal experience?
That's a good question. I think it's like a kind of a mix of all of them combined. I think I really write from like a personal place sometimes, but also like Moonlight, for example, really influenced that poem that I read, Blue Boy, and that poem's like about my father, but like when I watched the movie Moonlight, I felt like I've connected to something in me and in my personal life, and it just kind of like stuck with me. And so I also think that like movie and cinema has like shaped a lot of the ways I've like looked at things in my life. And also, I'm a daydreamer. I dissociate a lot. So sometimes I just will think of things and create scenarios in my head. And so I think it also comes from that too. And definitely music. I love music. It calms me down and I like to write to it sometimes.
That's so interesting for me because I don't know about anybody else, but I actually cannot write with music at all. And I'm a musician, so I'm constantly listening to it. But for certain people, I think that it kind of frames you. For me, I hope is this idea of like breaking down how do we think about writing itself? What is Carrington's versus Shaun's versus my way of expression, and how do we move through our lives in this location specifically together? Um, so it's interesting to me, like, I wonder how many people in this chat have seen that movie and maybe written a poem similar about something similar in that same kind of frame. I never think about movies. But the thing that I keep returning to when I see Carrington's work, I show you, like, this is an example of how she writes. But even when I think even the formatting that Lex Pomo allowed us to have, that may be a little bit more spaced out when she writes. Your tone carries a haunting and powerful, intimate feel, and you utilize this page in so many interesting ways. When deciding certain structural moves, how do you envision the reader interacting with your work? Like, what does white space mean in maybe the poems that you've read to us already or your other poems? And like, where did that come from, this rhythm and this style?
Definitely, like some of my poems, I have a lot of like white space and stuff. And I think that definitely came from like the poem or the poets that I was reading when I was in high school. They like influenced me a lot. So like Hanif Abdurraqib and Don S. Smith, Ocean Vuong. I feel like they tend to like utilize a lot of like white space. And I also use like the ampersand instead of ands in my poetry, and they do that. I like got that from them. And it just like connected with me and like also how I like text people and how I talk. So, but when I first started utilizing white space, I didn't actually like, I liked how it looked visually, and I didn't actually think about like my audience or my like readers, because at that point I like was just reading them and like sharing them with my friends or like my mom at the time. But I've definitely in the last year considered how it looks more to like the reader visually. And I think right now it helps me because I'm a fast talker, especially when I get nervous. So it kind of forces me to pause sometimes, and I still have to like work on that a little bit. But yeah.
I love that the ampersand and all these specific punctuation marks kind of come in the things you're reading already. What did you feel that made you want to latch onto it when you use an ampersand instead of an and? Is it a specific move, or does it really just depend on what poem it is?
I Hanif Abdurraqib, for example, he has like when he uses his ampersands in a lot of his like earlier work, it feels kind of like a run-on, just like a continuous thing. And so I think for me, when I talk and when I like articulate like my thoughts, especially my intrusive thoughts, because that's what comes out a lot in my poetry, it's like continuous. So I don't have a lot of like punctuation in a lot of my poetry because it sometimes my poems feel like endless. Um,
I love that. I love that because it's such a stream of consciousness move. That's how your brain works. When you're not, you're forced to use the punctuation half the time, right? That's how I feel. And that makes me think about, how does Gen Z, how does Gen Alpha interact with poetry versus Gen X and, the rest of us? Like, I don't know, the world of poetry may be changed by the use of emojis as we move forward. Thank you so there's a level of prose, there's a level of cursive that was being taught in the past that I think, like, how do our brains maneuver the visual element of writing, and how has that changed over the years? It's crazy. It's a lot of good stuff to think about. So let's go ahead and jump to Shaun. I want to read this real quick. Me and Shaun went to EKU together in our undergraduate time, and I just always loved Shaun's writing. Since the first time he opened his mouth, I was like, Lord have mercy, he's the smartest one in the room. And he would disagree with you or with me, but I stick by that opinion. Shaun Turner is the author of The Lawless River through Red Bird chapter books and a recipient of the Emerging Artist Award from the Kentucky Art Council. Shaun Turner serves as a fiction editor for Stirring, a literary collection, and was co-editor at Fire Poetry Journal. His fiction, nonfiction, and poetry can be found in such literary journals as the Chattahoochee Review, the Bayou Magazine, Still, the Journal, and the Appalachian Review, where he won the Denny C. I'm not seeing the end of that. Plattner Award in fiction. Welcome, Shaun.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here, and thank you, Sam, so much for asking me to be a part of this with Carrington, who I got to know Carrington's work this year, well, 2024, during Lex Pomo. And I just remember as soon as I read her work and her lines, I was there. And I was just like, I have to know who this person is. And I was very lucky to get to spend time with both of you during Heinemann this year. And it was a great experience for me to be able to spend time with you um and Carrington and everyone else who was there with us. But I'm very excited to be here. Thank you all for having me. Um, Tonight I'm going to share a few different poems that are part of uh Lex Pomo a little bit, part of some new stuff I've been working on. And Sam is going to share the text of the poetry in the shared space. That way you can see what's going on the page as I read them. And that's something that Sam actually started doing at some of her readings, and I've honestly stole that from her every time I've done a reading since because I think it's such a great visual element to see what's going on the page. So I'm going to start off with this first poem, Deregulate Me. Deregulate me, whispered the review tributary to its dumb and fractured banks, and they obliged in kind, all the more willing to hold water where water goes. The wooded bottom diverged its course long ago. Its pain, the occasional flooding water that tossed its sediments, made dams, tracked in an occasional moored up ford deep into the orange wood. Its abandoned corpse filled with all kinds of junk we'd find there. The glass bottles of old granddad, sun-bleached beer cans, tattered seats, foam exposed, spring cool cart ripped open. And that piece was kind of inspired a little bit by spending time in the woods when I was younger. Um, the next poem I'm going to read is a different experience in the woods, but more recently. It's called Necessary Roughness. Young pines lined the jagged rock path like vigilant sentinels, protecting the hewn gravel road. Here my body felt like intruder. The two jackrabbit dove into the brushy sordida, and a small cloister of turkeys chastised each other in tight monk's robes. I hefted my body here alone for days, as I always have, even here in this wilding place. Holler and hillock, my shortened breath quieter than the 100,000 bugs, the shy and singing frogs. They all called to me in the dark. They said, whoever you are, this heaviness you carry, take your sick and ineffable body back home, back home, back. Over and over again, they sang that word to me in the dark. I took my heavy feet and tripped on stones, felt their necessary roughness, looked to the trees again, how they shrugged branch to branch, air warm, wet, thick as prayer cloth, air absolving us all for yearning, for sweet aspiration.
And I just want to take a moment, if it's okay with you, if it doesn't throw you off, and just
Sure.
like, I think one of the things that I want this reading series to be able to do is like sit with poetry. And both of you have thrown such amazing pieces at us. So I almost want to say, let's take a minute and let's talk about some of the stuff you just told us. Where do you start with something like Deregulate Me? Without getting into the gritty details, there are some words that you say, and I don't know how to express this, but I need you to say moored up four deep in the orange woods, or wood. I need to hear about the spring coil heart ripped open. And it calls to something in me that feels uh I don't know, just like home. So I guess, like, where do these small pieces come from? And do you get portions of these pieces, or does it all come to you at one time?
I think every poem for me comes from a fragment of something. Um, I actually have like a notebook next to me always, and or my phone is always like right there. So I'll even text message myself like random things that pop up, random lines that interest me, random images that interest me, or write them down in a notebook. And Deregulate Me was the title came first, and that never really happens, honestly. The title usually comes like last for me. And so this came first. I just jotted it down on a piece of paper. And there's something honestly about especially June. If those of you who are not involved in Lexington Poetry Month, every June we get together at lexpomo.com. If you're a Kentucky poet, or affiliated with Kentucky in any way, it's just a generative writing space where literally hundreds of people write one poem a day for the month of June. And there's something about that environment of sharing poems and reading other people's work that gets you really generative that month, I think. And I was toying with this Deregulate Me. And of course everything is also inspired by something real. So I grew up in a rural area, walking the woods, and we would occasionally find in the middle of nowhere these cars. And so the Mordet Ford deep in the woods is a real Ford that exists somewhere in the forests of Jackson County. And the bottles of Old Granddad, the beer cans, those are all very real things. And so um I guess it's that synergy of trying to make a point, tell a story, and use words that represent those images to me in the best way possible, because I feel like words are what I have to do that.
I think it's a perfect way to explain it. And we don't have to go through every single poem, but God, some of these poems I just want to say, stop. That is so beautiful. Someone said, Audrey Collins said, love the calm response feeling between nature and the body. I think that's getting at what I'm trying to talk about. There's something that feels physical about both of your styles. Um, that it's something I can hold on to when you pull out those images of the car that really, these experiences that really happen. Before we move forward, is there anything that you could tell us about Necessary Roughness, like your experience with writing this one? And specifically, like how many edits does something like Necessary Roughness go through before we reach this point?
I think for me, this poem is a strange thing. And in fact, most of my poetry doesn't go through a lot of revision by the time I'm at the end of it, because I revise pretty constantly throughout my drafting process. And then by the time I get to the end, it's pretty close to what I want it to be. Maybe I'll have to make some small edits. But I talked about Heinemann earlier, and at Heinemann, you're supposed to generate work. There's supposed to be some writing done there, I think, too. But the only thing that came from my Heinemann experience this year was that poem and the things that came after that poem while I was at home. And so I think I was trying to distillate um, what it felt like for my body as it's changed over time to be in a natural space and to feel unwelcome there, and to sit with that for a while, because especially growing up, natural spaces were restorative for me. And as I've gotten older and a little bit more um as my body's changed over time, these spaces have became uh less healing, and they become harder to exist in. And so I was just trying to have that conversation in this poem. What does that look like as my body changes over time?
That's something that I see again and again in your poetry. We just kind of hit on this idea of physicality, and I think that you meet the body in poetry wherever it is, and in like I feel this very like healing process going on in your poetry, especially these days where you're kind of saying like here is the literal stone that I have to trip on in order to have this feeling about myself, in order to see myself as who I am now, in order to fully accept myself. So I just like to have been with you at Heinemann and to hear this work now. Uh, it's heavy, it's beautiful. So I thank you for sharing it.
This one, next one is a similar vein from the last one. It's called My Body, a Cradle, a Tomb. Gray black, the strip of reclaimed mineland pulsed with pollen haze, and my sweat bled into midnight with labored breathing. A prehistoric moth, the size of a kitten's head, kissed and kissed my arm, the rough-hewn porch. So vast felt the acres wilding there, both empty and not. I'd never felt more prone, not even when camping in the vinyl tent as a child, than my big, tired body did under that porch beneath those unfeeling stars. Let them lay me down. Let the insects, let the humid hair, its matte fingers that pressed down my throat, let the moth with its brown ringed eye spots, one cocked like a question mark, make my body into a cradle, a tomb, a place for them at least, all to rest in some short and fitful sleep. The last poem I have in this list is another poem from Lex Pomo, and it kind of is a little bit different in that it kind of moves outward and tells its own little story. It's called The Stars Little Threads. In this city, you will never see night wills itself in the way night does where you are. Sky is smudge, the stars, little threads, hinting beneath the clouds like a needle through dark denim. I don't think of you at all anymore. I think 2 blocks down, the severe grandma mends her grandson's pants on an old singer, a love chore under lamplight. Somewhere, a room full of people smoke together, silent in the dark. See how, next door, 2 lovers embrace another silent dinner. In my house, in the city I will never see, I imagine. Sky night wheels itself in the way night does where I am. Sky is smudge, the stars little threads. Got it
Yeah,
as well.
well, while you're doing that, just gonna go over here and I'm gonna read Amy's comment. She says, I love how you personify the land and the pieces of nature around you as you respond to it and it responds to you. Um, just to speak on what Amy said, I think that's something that I've been thinking about, like what makes me feel like both of your works, it connects to me on a way that is not just physical on the page, not just physical in description, but like it calls back to something maybe inside us locally that I don't really know how to reach yet. But there was something you said when everyone's smoking in the dark together. Lord, how many times have I watched my family sit in kind of this smoking in the dark? And you said something else about the singer. That's the first time I thought of a singer sewing machine maybe as the concept of singing, and I've just been recently making a quilt and thinking about my grandmother who made quilts and thinking about Bell Hooks who talked about quilt making as a way of connection and as a way of storytelling and history. So the idea that you brought to me, like just in this moment, the idea of a singer, um, was something I just never even thought about.
For me, it's sometimes that poem was so different for me because it really leans into the form of and repetition in poetry that I love so much, but have never been able to capture myself. And so I really wanted to make every single image I picked because it's such a sparse poem and so much does repeat itself. I really wanted to make those images like snapshots into these different spaces and try to condense them as much as I possibly could.
You just said something about repetition, and that was something that I was actually gonna ask you about this poem and just your use of repetition, because in knowing you since your undergraduate, um, I've seen you utilize repetition more frequently now. Do you feel like that was something that you learned from other authors? What does it mean for you to have repetition in a poem like this?
For me, I think repetition is definitely a a tool I've picked up reading other authors. There's this poem by Kaveh Akbar called "Orchids Are Sprouting from the Floorboards," and I remember reading this poem. I don't remember when he published this poem. I guess it was um, maybe it says 2017 here, but in my mind, I feel like it's earlier than that. But I remember reading this poem and being so arrested with his excessive repetition of the word orchids.
Mm.
And ever since then, I just thought about how much repetition means to us as readers, as people who listen to poetry. Um, Sam, as a musician, you know repetition is really important in music. You have a verse and a chorus. So there's something about repetition that really does speak to us, I think, on like a human level. And because it's part of that storytelling thing. It tells us what to look for. You know, turning it here like I did here is the interesting thing about this poem to me is that it takes that image from one person's perspective, and then by the end of your poem, it turns that same image.
And I love that. I know you didn't even mean to make this similarity, but like, you know, we read other people's work and then it influences us so much. We just read something about this car kind of experience with your work, and here we are, like, I don't know how even in small ways, these people influence us and we don't even know they're influencing us. Um, I love the use of repetition in your work. And even in this right here, I think this is a great poet to bring up. Thank you for bringing him to us. Because I mean, you feel like you are in the midst of all of those flowers. I remember Deidre White recently said something about a poem she wrote. We were in one of her workshops for the Kentucky State Poetry Society, and she said she has a poem where she just repeats the same word or phrase over and over again, but every time she says it, I mean, it really requires you as a reader to feel that. Like, what does it feel like when somebody repeats something so many times that I have to look it in the face, you know?
Yeah. Another great poem that does that is "She Had Some Horses" by Joy Harjo.
Mm,
And that's another poem that
joy.
has been one of my favorite poems for years and years. This last poem is a little bit different for me because it's a formal poem, a high bun. And it's not a traditional high bun where it's not a piece of prose. It's a poem and then a haiku underneath of it. It's called Barn Wild. And of course, I used Mary Oliver's Wild Geese. You do not have to be good as an epigram. Why did the three mean geese make a temporary home in the cool, dark rib cage of an abandoned barn? Its bent walls and one cracked cement patch a pond, relics of some hardscrabble time. A cage for the fowl to rest and shit and be mean before they wised up and resumed their inheritance. The north-south sojourn they felt even then, deep inside their hollow bones. Illuminated beaks and wings, a grave jostling framed by dust, barn wild. It's weird. And I started my MFA as a fiction writer. I'm a fiction writer at heart in a lot of ways in the storytelling sense. But there's so much to be found in the line for me that I made the switch to poetry after I got that MFA in fiction because I took a few poetry classes and really fell in love with what form could do. And putting the unframed, putting the fiction, which I consider pretty unframable and long form, into these little boxes, into these little frames, really allows us to find the images, find the emotional resonance of something, and really get to the heart of it in a way that's unique to poetry. And it's a little a snapshot of another person at a place in a point in time. And that's the beauty of poetry to me is um that personal becoming universal for all of us. I think too, even if you think about writing prose as its own sort of form and find your way into what tropes that you know and what forms that you know in the world of prose, and then making it in ways that are still your own. I think that's where you can come to a place where it becomes less scary because there are ways in which we all enter into our writing practice. And you can apply, and this is something I've learned, you can apply those key tenements of what makes your writing yours and put them into any of the genres. The genre doesn't matter. It's just another way to express a story and form and image. And you can put those into fiction, you put those into poetry, you can put those into nonfiction to serve your purposes as a writer.
It's about this idea of transparency, which I see in Carrington's work and I see in Shaun's work over and over and over again. And I think that's what he was talking about when it comes to moving outside of one genre into another. And Amy said that her MFA was in fiction. Now you've got me thinking about Shaun and Amy's work and how both of them come from a really descriptive zone that I see my cohort, my fiction cohort coming from. It's like, I don't know, I think it affects your voice in writing in such a cool way. Shaun's prompt, which really matches his work. It says choose a specific place that you know well, maybe one that brings up mixed emotions. As you think or draft, consider focusing on your five senses. Write a draft that explores how you or your body interact with this familiar place through sensory details and personal reflection. So we'll, in just a minute, we'll have basically a 20-minute session where you'll be able to sit here about 15-20 minutes and just take some time to write. So Shaun's prompt may be calling to you today. But if you'd like to play with form and get into this really cool stuff that Karrington has for us, this is how Carrington's brain works. She literally, and I'm sorry to tell on you, but she literally wrote a statement of purpose in Tonkas, which I think is just ridiculously brilliant. She says write either a linear Tonka, which is 57577, or I would say this wrong, sequane. 2 4, I think I wrote it in a different way here, so I would say it right. Sin Kane. I'm always saying that one wrong. 24682. About a moment from 2024. So this last year that impacted you the most. It can be a positive or a negative moment, but I want it to be something that really stuck with you. So that like makes you think about like out of all of the things you went through in this crazy year, or made you realize something that you didn't before. What emotions did it cause? Who was involved? What did it change in you? You can write more than one or do both in this 15 to 20 minutes that we'll have together.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I really liked to write haikus for my friends. I would just like randomly ask them if they wanted a haiku, and sometimes I would like force them to say yes because I just really liked practicing, and I just think doing like syllabic poetry, it like really like makes my brain work and it makes me kind of like look at language in a different way and like challenge myself. And I came across a book called Bathhouse and Other Tonka. I forgot who it was by, but I'll link it when I find it in a second. But it just really, I loved it. I loved reading it. And so it kind of, like Sam said, it like inspired me because I was stuck with my statement of purpose for my applications. And it really like helped me just like actually sit down and write something. So yeah, I just enjoy it.
These forms allow you to think about that. So the Tonka, just to tell you guys a little bit about it, you have 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 7 7. And then like that sonic, the Tonka employs a turn known as a pivotal image, which marks the transition from the examination of an image to the examination of a personal response. I really love this though. The Tonka is one of the oldest Japanese forms. And normally it's written in just that single line, which I think is really beautiful. Um, Something that I noticed that was similar between the two, they were both used in kind of this courtship when it came to when you think about medieval French poetry versus, Japanese royals, like they were both writing to each other in this. So with So with the cinquain, you're going to have 2 syllables, 4 syllables, 6, 8, and 2. And this makes this actually look like a diamond almost when you write it. Most of them have this specific form: A B A B B A B A A B A B C C B. Now,
I have a question.
yeah, go ahead, Ray.
You guys find that you write better when you're happy or when you're sad?
I definitely write from places of like sadness and like anger. So like I really tap into my negative emotions when I write. And so it definitely I use it as like a cathartic process to like purge them from me. So I definitely write more when I'm like not in a good mood.
For me, I think I tend to have a lot of feelings of nostalgia that guide some of my poetry. Sort of that what was and what is, that tension between those things. Um, but I also am at a point in my practice where I'm really trying to write something every day, even if it's something I won't use or something I will get rid of. And even if it's just a line or a phrase that I find or um so I'm trying to get myself a little bit away from all nostalgia all the time. you know, because I know that's something I can fall into, and I want to try to right now especially I'm thinking about more poems for more occasions. I remember going to grad school or undergrad, and the word occasional poems almost used like an insult. And for my vibe for 2025 is why not more poems for more occasions? Because, there's nothing wrong with having poetry for now, no matter what time that is and what emotion that is. I think it's important that we have more poems for more times.
I think that's an interesting thing to think about. Like, what is, you know, how are these poems affecting you in the moment of 2024, but how are we changing as poets and moving away from the tropes and the themes that we find ourselves caught in sometimes? Were a part of the Appalachian Writers Workshop this year, and you were both active members in Lex Pomo. You just talked about how you're writing every day. I tried to do that this summer and for the last year, and that is hard to write every day. Um, I guess my question is, can you speak on how those activities shape your writing this last year specifically? And you've done it for many years. So overall, what have you learned from the Appalachian Writers Workshop, and what have you learned from Lex Pomo?
It's very interesting because I feel like I've learned two very different things from both of those events in 2024. Lex Pomo is for me, it's such a generative time because it's so exciting. You're there with the community, you're sharing your poems, you're reading everyone else's poetry. And there's something about that environment that is just so refreshing. Like it's like drinking a gallon of ice water is and just being immersed in everyone's writing. And I love that. I love it so much. And there's something about that atmosphere that makes me very generative about being in that community. And Heinemann kind of gave me a chance to say maybe it's about experiencing the thing in which you're in and slowing down a little bit. And maybe if you're not generating all the time, that's fine too. That we're not supposed to necessarily be generating all the time. And so what if it's writing down a line or if it's absorbing media or doing something that fills the cup, I think filling the cup is very important to us as writers and just people in general, because you can't pour, the cliche, you can't pour from an empty cup. But it's very true. You can't scrape that bottom of the barrel all the time and hope that you're going to be producing something that's valuable to you, because you have to have that well of resources to use and trying to make it less of a chore and more of a way that that I process the world is kind of where I'm moving with my writing right now.
Mm. I really appreciate you saying that about Hyndman too, because this was my first year going. And one thing they did was they kept feeding us really good food. If I could say anything about Heinemann, you're going to be in the most beautiful place you've ever been. And you're surrounded by these amazing authors all the time. You're going to their workshops, you're hanging out with other authors, but you're eating soup beans too. And that right there was a moment for me where I was like, I need to calm down. I need to be in this moment. Um, I I don't know. I just comparing to you, like, what have you learned from Hyndman? What have you learned from Lex Pomo or other things that you have gotten to recently that you would want to talk to us about?
Yeah, I would say for Lex Pomo, it definitely taught me, like for editing my poems, sometimes I'll like just write it all out and I'll be like, oh, it's good, it's done. But sometimes I'll go back and be like, no. But for Lex Pomo, I would like write things and I would like post them on there and there would be like spelling errors. And I'd be like, oh no, because you only have like 15 minutes to like edit it again before like you can change it and stuff. And so it kind of made me be a little bit more intentional with like reading my work and like spelling errors because I love to write, but sometimes I literally just can't spell and it's very annoying. Going back through my work and like finding that. I'm like, oh, I posted that on my Instagram, like 3 words are misspelled. Like check your work. So it definitely taught me to like check more. And then for Heinemann, I think it didn't really teach me much about editing, but it definitely like taught me that like I need to not take myself so serious and not judge myself like and my work because everybody was so encouraging and sometimes I was like, oh wow, you like my poetry? Cool, because sometimes I don't. So it definitely taught me that like it's okay to be confident in your poetry and like you are a good poet. So it definitely like just reassured me and like built a lot of confidence within me. And if you haven't gone, I definitely suggest you go.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yes.
Thank you for your time. Thank you
Thank
for
you. That
coming.
was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yes.
If you guys are interested, the rest of this time, I thought maybe it would take us a lot longer to get through this. The rest of this time, I would love to spend some time with you all and see, and also Carrington and Shaun. I want to see what you guys wrote if you're interested in reading it out to us. I also want to invite you to our February meeting. I'll have more on our Facebook group and we'll have an Eventbrite. We'll do the same thing, Instagram, all that. You can find our January prompts on Instagram and Facebook as well. Right now, tentatively, we're thinking about February 8th, but I'll get back to you on that. That's basically going to be the first Saturday of every month. We have some amazing authors. If you've ever heard Jan LaPearl or Patsy Kisner, you are in for a treat. And Until the Surface Breaks is an amazing work of poetry that Patsy is willing to share with us. And she's with us here today too. So
And some detail, like Shaun would suggest. So, the kind of detail he would suggest, like really resonant stuff. I call it postpartum lover. Lover, I love to. Lover to love you and twist. When I felt you kick low in the smell of wood, hard joy, remembering better days. Here tears, unlearning, scent once given, fleas. What's yours? Slow forgot. Love, unlearn me, don't return. Love for joy of better days.
it was beautiful. Um, my favorite thing about this is how you think you won't write anything, and then there's a draft that was meant to come out, you know. I love that, Manny.
I really struggle with form, which you probably know if you've read my poetry. But I thought about something I hadn't thought about in a while. And so I don't have a title for this yet, and it's really rough, but I'll just read it. I haven't been to Granny's Holler since before COVID. Of course, she hasn't been there for longer. passing back in 2010, 2 weeks after I last saw her on a visit home to Kentucky when I lived out in Oklahoma and couldn't afford another trip home so soon to attend her funeral. So I mourned long distance. I mourned again when my uncle moved into her house and cut down the pine tree my cousins and I climbed growing up. And on that same visit, stole scion wood from the old pear tree, so now I have Granny's pears growing on my farm. I'm not sure what I'd do seeing her holler now, seeing more changes, when I can still outline her flower beds in my mind, and see shadows of Papa's old barn out back, and trace the edges of the garden let go years back. Would my footsteps land in echoes of Granny's? Or would my memories be mown over and manicured, replaced like my uncle's lawn?
Ooh, I love this. I also love being the host of this because then I just get to tell you guys what I loved about your poems. God, everything Amy writes, I love. And I hope that you are a feature for us because I know that you have a lot of stuff that's come out this last year. Do you mind before we move on to tell us what we should buy to have more of you in our life?
Oh, thank you so much. I would love to be on here. Let's schedule something. I have two chapbooks out, one from Bottle Cap Press titled Make Believe Worlds We Built Together, and one that came out last year from Finishing Line Press titled Who You Grow Into. And that one's all about my farm and my relationship to my land here. And then I have one I just got the proof copy for a couple weeks ago that's getting ready to come out. I just sent in my final edits, so this should be out this month. It's titled Out of Places. It's a full collection from Pine Row Press, and I'm getting ready to hopefully plan some events for it. And this actually, the first section of this book is Make Believe Worlds We Built Together. So if you have read that already, that's the first part of this, and there are two more sections beyond that. So thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And when did you say that we will be able to buy that book? When is that coming out?
It should be out sometime this month unless we gotten behind. I'm waiting to hear. I just sent my final edits in, so I'm waiting to get an absolute date.
Sweet. So I'll maybe hit you up about March because I would love to
Perfect.
get you in as soon as we can.
Same feeling. This is the ancient feeling. The boy of Neander when he returned to the cavern of his tribe's massacre. It has always been easy to slaughter innocents. It is a tiled room, muted, matte, of sorrow-skied blue and dead fish green. 10 plastic shower heads, feculent with white lye stains. It is a graveyard. Again, your voice is a child's as you test the unlit chamber for echoes. I can't bear the cowardice of hiding behind second person. It is me. I am screaming. But then again, I didn't scream. I took what was given me without a whisper, then went and got a watermelon slushy and drank it outside in a sun-bleached beach chair. I never still broke down to weeping, for what that which was drowned was only sleeping.
I love, guys, this is Peter, and he won't tell you, but he is an amazing author with me at UK. And we were actually, I got the pleasure of being a TA partner with Peter. So, like, brother for life over here. But he has this amazing way. I'm sorry that I'm like this, but he has this amazing way of pairing like really specific, like the slushy imagery, that thing that we all love, and then pulling us back into like the history of time in the same poem. And I don't know how he does that, but I love it so much. So thanks, Peter, for reading for us. I'm hoping to get him in here too as a feature reader with another fiction author. Okay, we next one we have up, and Amy just put her books in the chat as well. We have Audrey.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. I'm coming in from California, and just to let you know, I heard about you guys through Lit Nuts, so good promotion. Yeah, and I'll just read, like I said, I hope it's not too long, but here it goes. It doesn't have a title. Oh, and I used Shaun's as a jumping off point. All the needless suffering needled up into filtered bones, a body punished by a mind just trying to survive. A mind driving from mountaintop to mountaintop, driving the body forward through winter air frozen with mist, forward through frozen emotions held locked in body parts punished, locked onto the app's little green arrow. Elevation gain, elevation loss. Your loss, the whole human of you losing out. Mind-driven body falters, missteps over outcropped rock and goes down hard in the dirt, hard on osteoporotic bone, needless suffering, needles driven to hip, fear needles driven to mind, driving higher, longer, faster. And when do you let go? And what floods in then? Lightness, ease, the cloud float of wonder, float the legs unpunished, not mind-driven, not pushed, easy wonder of mist, boot squeak, bird screech, unfrozen images crowd the trail. No app, just dirt to follow, fern to follow redwood, to follow jack pine, to follow chaparral, to gopher holes and sun-shafted grass, dust of summer, spring bloom pink against green, leg strides strong as high summer sun shafts.
Exquisite. That's amazing. I'm gonna go ahead and take a nap, and if you would like to write us a whole book, because my God, that's an amazing first draft. I love it. Audrey, it's so great to see you, especially to know that you found us on something I've never even heard of, Lit Nuts. I'm gonna have to get in there. And to hear somebody from California, like this is a Kentucky-based group, but we welcome everybody from everywhere. We've also got, if you saw in the chat, somebody from forget where they said they were from, but it was not in the U.S. So thanks for being with us. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Gorgeous.
Thanks for listening.
Next we have Shaun.
Yeah, I stole from right. It didn't really steal. It's a prompt, right? Carrington gave it to us. I didn't steal it from him. So, so it's called a Tonka for the Falling Oak. Even the acres of waist-high grasses and sway lay low in a storm. There are worse things than bending in a downpour, the trees say.
Did you say you're going to read us one more too?
Oh no, that was it. That was it.
Can you read it again for me? Because I was like, will you read it one more time?
Sure. Again, Tonka for the Falling Oak. Even the acres of waist-high grasses and sway lay low in a storm. There are worse things than bending in a downpour, the trees say.
I love it. Beautiful. I love that. Shaun, I just want to say one more time before we move on, like, thank you so much. And Carrington, thank you so much for sharing out your work. Before you move forward, we move on. We got Kathy J and I wrote some, and Julia, I think she said she wanted to read as well. Shaun, do you have anything that any advice you could give us about staying out of our heads as writers?
You're asking the wrong man. No,
I'm asking the right person.
Isn't that where we're supposed to be?
yeah,
Right?
I love that, Kathy. I think that's exactly where we're supposed to be. But I don't think that that should get in the way with the work that we do or second guessing the work that we do. We can do that later. When we're writing, we should just write, focus on that thing, getting it on the page, and then whatever you want to do to it, you have all the time in the world to do. So don't let your head get in the way of your writing. Let it lead your writing. And I think you'll do yourself fine every time.
Thank you, Shaun. I knew he had something good to say that I needed to hear, so I needed to ask that one. Kathy, I can't wait to hear. We're also going to feature Kathy this year. Kathy, can't wait to hear what you have to read.
Well, I actually wrote for Carrington's prompts. I did a cinquain and a Tonka. And because I love Shaun, I had to write one for one of his prompts. So, Cinquain for 2024. This year's pains, chains restrict. Tainted blood courses rough. Wild rapids churn me to dirt. God spurs. Tonka for being unbroken. Hip, hip, hurrah! Healed enough to work again. After 10-month break, back outside, seeing suns rise, mind inhales and exhales. And then for Shaun, I attempt to shop for raw meat at Kroger. My gut heaves. The sight and stench of excessive rows of raw animal flesh bring on a gag reflex, reminiscent of a time when fellatio was forced.
Kathy, you're brilliant, and I love that you were able to literally write all 3 prompts during the time that I wrote 1 prompt. And I also love that Shaun's work inspired your Kroger poem, or your grocery store poem, because I affiliate Shaun with grocery store writing. So
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way, though.
I know it was something that you didn't even know. He wrote like a series of poems about grocery stores, and I've been stuck in
Oh,
them
I
ever since.
didn't know that.
It's
That
just
it was the psychic wave, I think.
Well, yeah, I
and
can't
Kathy,
shop for meat at Kroger.
your book didn't come out that long ago. If you want to share it
A
out with us.
year ago,
Not that
No,
long.
no.
yeah, that's a coon's age. No, I'm sorry, a raccoon's age. Yeah, in
Well, if you
poetry. Came out in January of 2024.
well,
It's a
if you want to
passe.
share, it's an amazing book. I've read it twice. If you want to share the link out, I'd love for you to do that. Especially with Accent right now, you can get, is it 30% off right now?
Ooh, was it 30? Yeah,
I'm
everything.
pretty big.
Accents Publishing is having a book wide, all the book sales are 30% off for the month of January, their 15th year anniversary.
It's amazing. Um, yeah, I love it. And next we have Jay.
Hey there. I went with a combination of Shaun and I combined them together, was responding to something in nature, and I'm now adapting it to, I think it's 4 cinquains in sequence. So here it is. When I walk Catalpa on that day, ginkgo shed just before giving thanks. I don't think beauty, leaf, golden, brightened grandeur, cover asphalt darkness, matching the curb, my mind aroused, olfactory, sweetness and rancid, caught in the back of my throat, back corner, stall after crowded Saturday night when the barkeep called off and you and I left to fend for ourselves, for our own devices, redefining the early Sunday service, knees bent, head bowed.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jay. Um, Jay's one of my favorite poets, and he is also uh, the co-host of Poetry at the Table, Kenwick Table, every first Wednesday of every month. Jay, I also know that you are the man to ask about any upcoming events happening anywhere ever. So, is there any event or contest or anything you'd like to shout out to us?
Yeah, actually, there are, the South Arts has a grant that's open right now, which is for artists in the South, and Kentucky's one of the states included in that, and it's due on the 15th of this month. Also, the Appalachian Writers Workshop application is open and available with it. So they just put out all of that information. Also, we will be, for those of you who have had a book out since November, or will have one coming out this year before November, the Kentucky Book Festival application will open on January 15th. So if you have something coming out, post to that. And then also my old chapbook from 2017 is also an accents title. So you can get the occupation at 30% off right now as well.
And I'll share out a link on Hill Riders website for Jay's work. Unless Jay, you have a link to that. You can also just go to the Accents website and search for his name, and you'll be able to find it there. And
I'll post it up.
Go ahead.
And then also one other thing is, I almost forgot, January 27th, that Monday evening, I will be in conversation at Paul Sawyer Public Library in Frankfort with Wes Blake, talking about his gorgeous novella, Pineville Trace. So we'll just be in conversation that Monday night at Paul Sawyer there in downtown Frankfort.
That is awesome. That's something that is a must see. I will definitely be there for that. And I will have not only a video of this meeting, but I'll also repost all of these dates if you've missed any of this. Yeah, no, 2017, I think anything close to 2020 didn't get the shine that it deserved. So I just recently read his book. It's amazing. Feel free to grab that. Next up we have Julia. Thank you, Jay.
Hi, everyone. So I'm here from Pittsburgh. Just recently, I was lived in West Virginia for the last several years. And I used Shaun's prompt to start and wrote sort of a short poem, and then adapted it into a tanka. So the first one, I can still feel and I was the prompt, I was remembering a forest like in my backyard from several years back. I can still feel the damp, matted leaves underfoot, the tangle of roots in loose soil, my fingers giving it a good scratch before scattering seeds, tucking them in their beds for their winter slumber. The trees stand proud in their nakedness, having given what they can by letting go. And the second adaptation of that is dampened, matted leaves, tangle of roots in loose soil, trees naked and proud. My body wants to belong, a seed tucked into the earth.
Beautiful, Julia. I just feel like we have the best readers here tonight, like just top notch. Julia, I know you have a ton of amazing things happening right now for you as well. Could you shout out just one or two of those awesome things and where we can find your work?
Yes, so I have a book that is with the University Press of Kentucky right now, and it will be out next fall in October. And I hope Sam to be able to connect here, closer to that. But I'm really excited. It's a work of nonfiction. And it's the story of a woman in West Virginia and her activism to get retirees health benefits. So it's a true story. It's a woman who has just been deeply inspiring to me, and I'm really excited to be able to share her work.
And that's something that I absolutely love about your work, is that it like looks into the details of us, of our areas, of our communities. Being in UK's program, I was recently able to be in a Appalachian class with Crystal Wilkinson and Frank X. Walker, and it was life-changing. But one of my favorite things about that was to witness my nonfiction cohort, just what they did with that, and how nonfiction brains work and take fiction, creativity, poetry, and move it into new directions. You've got me thinking also about, what if you had a chapbook or something where you had the same poem and you tried out these different forms, through revision. I think you utilizing both forms, it helped us almost peel back something as you read those. So it was really beautiful. Okay. Well, we have one more reader. Sarah says she's interested in reading. I just want to say before you leave, February 8th, I'd love for you to come see Jane LaPearl and Patsy Kisner. They're amazing women. So come back and see us. And Sarah, if you will kind of end us, be our last one tonight.
This one isn't quite a grocery store poem, but it's close. I can still taste the almost floral, rotting scent of the shoe disinfectant that hung in every gulp of air I ever took in the Forest Lanes bowling alley. A greasy smell that mixed with the smoke of cheap cigarettes and fluorescent yellow popcorn grease. Chemical scents that linger in my memory. Now women go get their mammograms in the clinic they put in there, or so my nanny tells me. Every visit I make back home, more places have become medicinal. Even the Kmart, where a lady threw a 2-liter at my sister's head while she manned the register, has become a medical center. Blue light specials on TB test, tetanus shots.
I love it. That was beautiful. Sarah, if you have anything you want to, share out or put in the chat about your writing, if you have anything coming out, let us know.
I have a chapbook coming out this year. I've done a really bad job at emailing the back, so I'm not sure when, but it'll be sometime soon coming out through Pork Belly Press. It'll be my first chapbook. I'll also, if anybody is in Louisville, I know I saw Manny in here earlier. He's come to it before. I lead the South Louisville Writers Gathering at the Rosewater Bookshop. You can find us on Facebook. We meet the first Monday of each month for a workshopping circle, and then we meet the third Wednesday of each month for a generative writing group. And we're not meeting this Monday, obviously. We're all going to be snowed in. But the Wednesday gathering in January, we're also doing a book swap. So you can bring like a used book, swap it with people, bring books you don't want in your house anymore, and we're going to donate them to the Rosewater, but you get to take home some free books. So there you go.
Well, I love a free book. I'm a hoarder, so I would love to have another book. I think I need more all the time.
Yeah.
So thank you
I'm
for bringing
getting ready to die, and I want to give away books.
Yeah.
Kathy, I'll take all of your books. Thank you. I'll come get them.
Okay, anytime.
All of y'all, I just want to say, if you feel like sending me an email, I will share out this information in the groups as well. So feel free to, I'll put the email one more time in the chat. Thank you guys so much for coming and being a part of this first round of this. I mean, we truly appreciate it. Appreciate Shaun, appreciate Karrington, and everyone in here. The point of this was not to write our most beautiful things we've ever written. It was to be in community with each other because you're amazing. Be safe. And I want to just, Amy says one more thing. If anyone is in Moorhead, there's a writing group that meets at Sawstone Brewery, and they'll have a Facebook group called Sawstone Poets. So that's something else we could definitely enjoy. Thank you all and have a good snowed in experience. I love y'all. See you in February.